The sun hung low in the sky, a fiery orb casting long shadows across the endless expanse of golden sand. The desert stretched as far as the eye could see, an unforgiving sea of dunes that shifted and whispered with every gust of wind. Captain Marcus Kane trudged through the scorching heat, his boots sinking into the soft sand with each heavy step. His military uniform was torn and stained, evidence of days spent wandering aimlessly after his unit had been ambushed by enemy forces. Marcus adjusted the strap of his nearly empty canteen, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing down on him. He'd lost count of how many days it had been since he'd last seen another human being. The desert played tricks on his mind, conjuring mirages of water and civilization that always disappeared upon closer inspection. His stomach growled painfully, reminding him of his dwindling supplies. All that remained was a single piece of hardtack bread tucked away in his breast pocket. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus spotted something unusual on the horizon. At first, he thought it was another trick of the light, but as he approached, the figure became more distinct. It was a woman, or at least what appeared to be one, lying motionless in the shade of a large rock formation. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent quality, catching the sunlight in a way that made her seem almost otherworldly. Her clothing, if it could be called that, consisted of flowing, translucent material that seemed to shift colors with every breath. Marcus hesitated, his military training warring with his humanity. In this godforsaken place, encountering anyone was unusual, let alone someone who looked so different from anything he'd ever seen. But as he drew closer, he noticed the slight rise and fall of her chest. She was alive, though barely. Her breathing was shallow, and her eyes fluttered beneath closed lids. Compassion won out over caution, and Marcus knelt beside her. The alien woman's condition was dire. Her lips were cracked and dry, and her delicate frame suggested she hadn't eaten in days. Marcus's hand instinctively went to his pocket, feeling the hard edges of his last piece of bread. He knew that sharing this meager sustenance meant risking his own survival, but the sight of this vulnerable creature stirred something deep within him. Without allowing himself time to second-guess the decision, he broke the bread in half and gently placed a portion against her lips. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing vertical pupils that contracted in the bright sunlight. They widened in surprise as she registered Marcus's presence and the food he offered. For a moment, she regarded him with a mixture of suspicion and gratitude before accepting the bread. Her fingers, longer and more slender than a human's, brushed against his as she took the offering. Despite their obvious differences, there was something profoundly human about the connection they shared in that moment of mutual understanding. Marcus watched as she ate, noting how her strength seemed to return slightly with each small bite. The act of kindness, though simple, felt monumental in the vast emptiness of the desert. As he settled back against the rock, keeping watch while she recovered, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was more than just a chance meeting in the wilderness. There was something about the way she observed him. Her gaze filled with an intelligence that transcended language barriers, that suggested this moment would ripple outward in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. The woman's recovery was gradual but steady under Marcus's watchful care. As the sun began its descent, painting the desert in hues of orange and purple, she attempted to communicate through a series of melodic clicks and hums. Though Marcus couldn't understand the words, the meaning behind them was clear. Gratitude radiated from her like heat waves rising from the sand. She gestured toward herself and then pointed skyward, repeating a sound that Marcus interpreted as her name, Veilen. In response, Marcus touched his chest and said his name clearly. Veilen tilted her head, studying the syllables as if committing them to memory. Their communication evolved through gestures and expressions, each discovery bringing them closer despite their species' differences. Veilen demonstrated remarkable resourcefulness, showing Marcus how certain plants native to the desert could provide both hydration and nutrition. Her knowledge of the environment proved invaluable, teaching him techniques for finding moisture in unexpected places and identifying edible vegetation. As days passed, their bond deepened. Veilen revealed her ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields, creating small protective shields that shielded them from the worst of the desert storms. These displays of power were accompanied by flashes of color that danced across her skin, creating patterns that seemed to convey emotions beyond mere words. Marcus learned to read these chromatic signals, understanding when she was worried, curious, or content. In return, he shared his own knowledge of survival tactics, demonstrating how to construct shelters from available materials and how to navigate using the stars. Their journey together became a dance of mutual learning and adaptation. Veilen taught Marcus to see the desert not as an enemy, but as a living entity with its own rhythms and secrets. She showed him how to listen for the subtle vibrations in the ground that indicated approaching danger or hidden water sources. Meanwhile, Marcus introduced Veilen to basic human concepts of friendship and trust, concepts that seemed foreign yet fascinating to her. Through their interactions, they created a new language of sorts, blending human vocabulary with Veilen's melodic sounds and colorful expressions. The transformation in both of them was remarkable. Marcus found himself shedding the rigid mindset of a soldier, embracing instead the fluidity of existence that Veilen embodied. His movements became less mechanical, more in tune with his surroundings. Veilen, in turn, adopted certain human mannerisms, particularly when expressing concern or excitement. Their physical appearances began to reflect their shared experiences. Marcus's skin darkened from constant exposure, while Veilen's natural luminescence seemed to pulse more vibrantly with each passing day. One evening, as they rested beside a rare oasis, Veilen performed a ritual that left Marcus awestruck. She stood in the moonlight, her form becoming almost transparent as she raised her arms skyward. The air around her crackled with energy, and suddenly, thousands of tiny lights appeared, swirling in intricate patterns above them. Through gestures and the few words they had learned to share, she explained that this was a traditional display of thanks among her people, one typically reserved for life-saving acts of kindness. The lights formed shapes that Marcus recognized, representations of their journey together, their moments of shared discovery, and most prominently, the simple act of sharing bread that had started it all. Despite their growing bond, the harsh reality of their situation never fully receded. Supplies remained scarce, and the desert continued to test their resolve. During one particularly brutal sandstorm, Veilen's protective abilities reached their limit, forcing them to seek refuge in a narrow canyon. As they huddled together against the raging winds, Marcus realized that their survival depended increasingly on their combined strengths. He used his knowledge of structural stability to reinforce their shelter with rocks, while Veilen maintained a barrier that kept the worst of the storm at bay. Their synchronized efforts demonstrated how far they had come from that initial meeting, when they were strangers struggling individually against the elements. Their journey took an unexpected turn when they discovered ancient ruins partially buried in the sands. Veilen's reaction to the sight was immediate and intense. Her skin flared with rapid color changes, and she emitted a series of urgent sounds that Marcus had never heard before. Through their developed system of communication, she conveyed that these ruins belonged to her people, a race that had once thrived in this region before some great catastrophe forced them to retreat to distant planets. The revelation added new layers to their relationship, as Marcus realized he was witnessing history that no human had ever documented. Exploring the ruins together, they uncovered technology far advanced from anything Marcus had encountered. Veilen handled the devices with reverence, explaining their functions through demonstrations rather than words. Some served practical purposes, like purifying water or generating sustainable energy, while others seemed to preserve knowledge or record events. Marcus watched in wonder as Veilen activated a holographic display showing her people's history, their prosperity, their struggles, and finally, their departure. The images depicted scenes of cooperation between her species and humans, suggesting that their current bond was perhaps part of a larger cycle of interspecies relationships. These discoveries changed the dynamics of their partnership. Veilen began teaching Marcus how to operate some of the simpler devices, while he helped her understand human perspectives on technological advancement. They spent hours experimenting with equipment that could potentially help them survive the desert's challenges more effectively. One device in particular caught Marcus's attention, a small sphere that seemed capable of creating temporary portals. Veilen explained that such technology had been crucial during her people's exodus, but its use required careful consideration and precise timing. As they delved deeper into the ruins, they uncovered chambers containing what appeared to be sleeping pods. Veilen's reaction to these was particularly poignant. She ran her fingers along the smooth surfaces, her skin glowing with a gentle blue light. Through their shared language of gestures and sounds, she communicated that these pods had preserved members of her species during their migration. Some might still contain survivors, waiting for the right conditions to awaken. The possibility of reconnecting Veilen with her people added a new dimension to their mission, transforming their struggle for personal survival into something potentially world-changing. Their exploration of the ruins also revealed something unexpected: signs of recent activity. Certain areas showed evidence of maintenance, and some systems appeared to have been recently powered. Veilen's reactions grew increasingly agitated, her color patterns shifting rapidly between shades of red and violet. Through their developed communication methods, she conveyed that someone else had been here, possibly members of her species who had returned or other beings aware of this ancient technology. This realization added urgency to their actions, as they now understood they might not be alone in the desert. The temperature dropped sharply as night fell over the desert, casting long shadows across the ancient ruins. Marcus and Veilen worked methodically, combining their skills to activate the ruins' dormant systems. The air hummed with energy as Veilen manipulated control panels using both touch and her unique electromagnetic abilities, while Marcus provided physical support and human intuition about mechanical processes. Each successful activation brought new revelations about her people's technology and their historical connection to Earth. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Veilen froze, her skin flashing warning colors Marcus had learned to recognize as alarm. From the darkness beyond the ruins emerged figures, not human, but definitely not entirely alien either. They moved with an unsettling grace, their forms humanoid yet distinctly adapted to the desert environment. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their skin bore markings similar to Veilen's, though more pronounced and complex. The leader stepped forward, speaking in melodic tones that resonated with authority, though Marcus could only catch fragments of meaning through his limited understanding of Veilen's language. Veilen responded immediately, her voice rising and falling in a complicated pattern of clicks and hums that seemed to carry emotional weight. The exchange grew heated, with Veilen's skin cycling rapidly through colors Marcus associated with both distress and determination. He positioned himself slightly in front of her, a protective gesture that earned him a brief glance of gratitude from Veilen. The newcomer's attention shifted to Marcus, their expressions unreadable but their body language clearly registering surprise at his presence. Through their interaction, Marcus pieced together that these beings were indeed members of Veilen's species, but from a faction that had chosen to remain on Earth rather than join the Exodus. They viewed Veilen's assistance to a human as a betrayal of their carefully maintained isolation. The leader gestured toward Marcus, then to the ruins, making it clear they considered humans unworthy of accessing their advanced technology. Veilen's response was passionate and forceful, her arguments punctuated by vivid displays of colored light that seemed to physically affect the air around them. The tension escalated when the leader made a dismissive gesture toward Marcus, accompanied by a command in Veilen's language that she visibly rejected. Her rejection triggered a cascade of responses from her people, who began activating defensive systems within the ruins. Energy fields sprang up around them, creating barriers that separated Marcus and Veilen from the group. Veilen's distress was palpable as she tried to maintain contact with Marcus while simultaneously defending their position to her people. Marcus understood enough to realize that the situation had become dangerously political. These beings weren't merely concerned about human access to their technology. They feared what knowledge of their existence might mean for their carefully constructed isolation. Veilen's choice to help him had disrupted centuries of carefully maintained separation. The leader's next words, spoken directly to Marcus in halting but understandable English, confirmed this understanding. Your kind always seeks to conquer. We will not be your next conquest. Before Marcus could respond, Veilen intervened, placing herself firmly between him and her people. Her voice carried a commanding resonance he hadn't heard before, and her skin displayed complex patterns that seemed to tell a story of their shared journey. She addressed her people with evident authority, referencing their ancient alliances with humans and the moral imperative of helping those in need. The argument that followed was fierce, with both sides presenting compelling cases that highlighted the fundamental conflict between maintaining tradition and embracing change. As the debate continued, Marcus noticed subtle shifts in the group dynamics. Some members of Veilen's people seemed swayed by her arguments, their body language softening and their glow patterns becoming less aggressive. Others remained staunchly opposed, forming a protective circle around the leader. The division within the group mirrored the internal conflict evident in Veilen's constantly shifting colors, torn between loyalty to her people and commitment to the path she'd chosen with Marcus. The standoff reached a critical point when the leader activated a device that caused the ground beneath Marcus and Veilen to vibrate violently. Ancient mechanisms whirred to life, and sections of the ruins began to rearrange themselves, creating a maze-like structure that threatened to separate them permanently. Veilen reacted instinctively, grabbing Marcus's hand and pulling him toward a specific section of the ruins. Her people shouted warnings that Marcus couldn't fully understand, but their meaning was clear. they were venturing into forbidden territory. Together, they dashed through narrowing corridors, pursued by both the automated defenses and several members of Veilen's faction. The chase led them to a chamber unlike any they'd seen before. Walls covered in crystalline structures that pulsed with light, and a central platform displaying a three-dimensional map of multiple star systems. Veilen immediately engaged with the controls, her fingers moving with practiced precision even as she maintained her grip on Marcus's hand. The pursuing voices grew louder, echoing through the corridors, but Veilen's focus remained absolute. She turned to Marcus, her expression conveying both urgency and apology. Using their shared language of gestures and the few English words she knew, she explained that they needed to make a choice that would determine not only their immediate survival but potentially the future relationship between their species. The crystalline walls began to glow brighter, responding to Veilen's commands, while outside the chamber, her people's shouts took on a desperate quality. Marcus realized that whatever happened next would irreversibly alter the course of both their lives and possibly the fate of human-alien relations on Earth. In the pulsating chamber, Veilen activated a sequence that caused the crystalline walls to project holographic records of past human-alien collaborations. The images showed humans and her people working together to solve environmental crises, advance medical knowledge, and explore deep space. Each scene unfolded with clarity, revealing moments of profound understanding and mutual growth. Marcus recognized familiar landmarks from Earth's history, ancient civilizations whose sudden advancements now made sense in this context. The projections showed humans and aliens standing side by side, their combined efforts yielding results neither species could have achieved alone. Veilen's people burst into the chamber, their expressions ranging from awe to anger as they witnessed their own history displayed before them. The leader stepped forward, attempting to interrupt the sequence, but Veilen held firm, her electromagnetic field creating a protective barrier around the platform. Through their shared language, she explained to Marcus that these records contained proof of their species' successful partnerships throughout history, proof that had been deliberately hidden by the isolationist faction. The holograms continued their narrative, showing how periods of collaboration had consistently resulted in breakthroughs benefiting both species. The chamber's atmosphere grew charged as the implications sank in. Members of Veilen's people began whispering among themselves, some nodding in agreement while others maintained their opposition. The leader's authority seemed to waver as the visual evidence mounted, showing how their ancestors had valued these alliances enough to document them so thoroughly. Veilen guided Marcus to specific projections that detailed crucial moments where human empathy and alien technology had saved entire ecosystems, prevented wars, and cured devastating diseases. As the presentation continued, Marcus noticed a significant shift in the room's dynamics. Several members of Veilen's species approached the platform, their skin patterns indicating curiosity and hope. They began asking questions in their melodic language, and Veilen answered with increasing confidence, translating key points for Marcus. The discussion evolved into a debate about the nature of progress and the risks versus rewards of re-establishing connections with humans. The leaders' arguments focused on maintaining purity and safety through isolation, while Veilen countered with evidence of how controlled, mutually beneficial exchanges had historically strengthened both species. The crystalline walls responded to the intensity of the discussion, projecting additional data streams that showed potential future collaborations. These simulations depicted solutions to contemporary global challenges, climate change mitigation, sustainable energy sources, and medical advancements that could save millions of lives. Each scenario featured humans and Veilen's people working in harmony, their combined strengths addressing issues that neither species could tackle alone. The visual impact of these possibilities began to sway even the most resistant members of her faction. Veilen turned to Marcus, her expression filled with determination. Through their shared language, she conveyed that the decision they faced extended beyond their immediate circumstances. It wasn't just about whether to trust each other or reveal their existence to humanity. It was about choosing which version of the future they wanted to create. The chamber's atmosphere grew heavier with significance as everyone present realized that their choices would echo through generations to come. The holographic projections continued to display alternative futures, each more compelling than the last, forcing everyone to confront the consequences of their decisions about interspecies cooperation and trust. The chamber fell silent as the final holographic projection faded, leaving behind an atmosphere charged with possibility. Veilen stood at the center of the platform, her skin glowing softly with a steady blue light that Marcus had come to associate with resolve and hope. The leader of her people stepped forward, his expression no longer one of outright hostility but rather contemplative uncertainty. He gestured toward the crystalline walls, now darkened but still humming faintly with residual energy, and spoke in measured tones that carried both authority and vulnerability. Veilen responded, her voice rising and falling in melodic patterns that seemed to harmonize with the room's ambient hum. She pointed to Marcus, then to herself, and finally to the assembled group, emphasizing their shared humanity, or perhaps something deeper, their shared capacity for connection and understanding. Her argument wasn't just about survival or technology. It was about trust, compassion, and the courage to bridge differences. Marcus felt a surge of emotion as he realized how far they had come since that first moment in the desert when he had offered her half his bread. What began as an act of simple kindness had grown into something monumental, a chance not only to save themselves but to reshape the future for both their species. He stepped closer to Veilen, placing a hand on her shoulder in solidarity. The gesture didn't go unnoticed by her people. Some exchanged glances, while others nodded slightly, their earlier resistance softening. The leader sighed deeply, his shoulders relaxing as if carrying the weight of centuries. He turned to address his followers, speaking in their melodic language before switching to halting English. "Perhaps we have forgotten who we are," he admitted, his voice tinged with regret. "We chose isolation out of fear, but fear has kept us from becoming more than we were." Veilen's eyes widened, and she responded with urgency, her words flowing like music as she urged him to consider what could be gained, not lost, by embracing this new path. She activated another sequence on the platform, this time displaying images of Earth's current struggles: deforestation, pollution, wars over resources, and communities ravaged by disease. Then, side by side, she showed simulations of what might happen if her people worked alongside humans. Not as conquerors or overlords, but as partners. Clean energy grids powered cities without harming the environment. Cures for incurable diseases emerged from joint research efforts. Deserts bloomed with life thanks to advanced agricultural techniques. Her people watched intently, many visibly moved by the vision. One elder figure, a woman whose skin shimmered with intricate patterns that suggested great age and wisdom, stepped forward. She addressed the group, her voice resonating with quiet authority. Through Veilen's translation, Marcus understood that she spoke of balance. Not domination, not subjugation, but harmony between two species striving toward a common goal. The leader hesitated, then finally nodded. "If we proceed," he said slowly, addressing Marcus directly, "it must be done carefully. Trust is fragile, and mistakes will cost dearly." His gaze shifted to Veilen. "You have shown us what can be achieved through cooperation. Perhaps it is time we remembered our past, and built a better future." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. Some members approached Veilen and Marcus, their body language less guarded now, offering gestures of respect and curiosity. Veilen introduced them one by one, explaining their roles within their community and their individual skills. Marcus marveled at the diversity among them, not just in appearance, but in temperament and perspective. They weren't a monolithic entity driven solely by fear. They were individuals capable of growth, just like humans. As the discussion continued, plans began taking shape. The ruins would serve as a neutral ground where humans and Veilen's people could meet, learn, and collaborate under strict guidelines designed to prevent exploitation or misunderstanding. Technology would be shared incrementally, with safeguards in place to ensure mutual benefit. Most importantly, communication would remain open, fostering understanding rather than suspicion. Veilen turned to Marcus, her luminous eyes filled with gratitude and determination. "Together," she said simply, using the English word she had learned early in their journey. It was a promise, a declaration, and a vow all at once. Together, they had faced the harshest elements of the desert, uncovered ancient truths, and challenged deeply ingrained fears. And together, they would forge a new chapter in the story of two species bound by choice rather than circumstance. Weeks later, the first official meeting between human representatives and Veilen's people took place within the restored ruins. Scientists, diplomats, and cultural leaders gathered around the same crystalline platform where Marcus and Veilen had stood during their pivotal moment. As discussions unfolded, Marcus observed the careful exchange of ideas, the cautious optimism on both sides, and the growing sense of shared purpose. Veilen remained at his side throughout, her presence a constant reminder of how far they had come. One evening, after a particularly productive session, Marcus found himself standing outside the ruins, gazing up at the stars. Veilen joined him, her skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. Without needing words, they shared a moment of quiet reflection. The desert stretched endlessly before them, its sands whispering secrets of the past and possibilities of the future. "You gave me bread," Veilen said softly, surprising him with her use of English. "And I gave you hope." Marcus smiled, feeling the weight of those words settle warmly in his chest. "No," he replied, shaking his head. "We gave each other something much greater, a chance to change everything, for the better." As they stood there, hand in hand, the wind carried the sound of laughter and conversation from inside the ruins. Humans and aliens alike were finding common ground, building bridges where none had existed before. The desert, once barren and unforgiving, now seemed alive with potential. And in that moment, Marcus knew that their act of kindness, the sharing of a single piece of bread, had sparked something extraordinary, a partnership rooted in trust, empathy, and the unwavering belief that together, anything was possible. The stars above twinkled brightly, as if celebrating the dawn of a new era, one where differences weren't barriers but opportunities, and where compassion could truly transform the world.